This is Just Nigeria. Coming up,
1,000 naira is too low for you to add extra 50 naira. We already have enough bank charges.
Over time, as people start to realize that they actually have to pay this 50 naira, they begin to start planning around it and increase the number of cash in the system, which is the opposite of what CBN wants to achieve.
stamp duty on POS transactions, a threat to Nigeria's cashless policy. Also, electronic waste recycling, another gold mine yet to be discovered. And good deeds, the woman giving disabled children a chance to live a normal life. Plus,
my name is Wendy Okolo. Check me out.
The aerospace engineer at the Intelligence Systems Division of NASA encouraging young girls and women to push their limits. Welcome to Just Nigeria from the BBC and Channels TV. And here on the show, we'll look at the stories getting shared, liked and tweeted on social media. I am Wali Fakile. We'll start with something a lot of us have been talking about offline and online. Now, have you been to a fuel station or supermarket lately and were told of an additional 50 naira charge on your purchase if you are to pay on the POS machine? Well, the extra charge is known as stamp duty and it's on all electronic transactions from 1,000 naira and above. So, who implemented this policy and how does it affect Nigeria's push for a cashless economy? I've been out and about to find out. An automated teller machine, one of the perks of the modern world. It's technology adopted as part of the central bank's cashless economy drive. And with it came the debit cards like this one. It's convenient, fast and safe. But a new government directive could erode gains made to improve accountability. In September, the CBN directed banks, processors and switches to start charging 50 naira stamp duty on individual transactions as against aggregate transactions. It also reviewed the merchant service charge from 1,200 naira to 1,000 naira. MSC is the fee merchants, including supermarkets and online stores, are charged when customers pay for items using an e-platform like a POS. This means electronic transactions of 1,000 naira and above would come at an extra cost of 50 naira. Who pays this sum? Customers like you and I. The 50 naira charge has now been implemented by most fuel stations across Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. A visit to the store tells the same story. The owner of the facility tells me the charge is already taking the toll on his business.
It has affected my business in so many ways because some customers, once they walk in, you tell them that they will, after picking goods, you will tell them that there's another 15 naira as in charge on top of on the amount that they're supposed to pay. And some of them will flame up. They will tell you that, why would they pay an extra amount as in when the charge of the goods is so amount?
So, what do people think about this?
ATM is meant to be for cashless policy. With this 15 naira, this cashless policy has been defeated.
We already have enough bank charges. So I think you should just maybe increase the fee. Maybe when you have something like 10,000, then you can add 50 naira. But 1,000, please, pity us.
These concerns are shared by business owners and merchants alike. This online retail business owner tells me he has found a way around the 50 naira charge, but at the expense of his company's bottom line.
Eventually, when Congress starts to charge the 50 naira stamp duty, the biggest problem is our customers will now be swayed towards cash transactions. Now, the biggest problem for us will be we now have to get our dispatch riders to carry huge amounts of cash, which is a big problem because it not only puts the business at risk, it also puts their lives at risk. And for us, that's a big problem and a big hurdle we need to jump over. I believe we should be moving away from cash instead of moving towards cash.
The question then is, just how effective is Nigeria's cashless economy?
This cost should be minimal so that the traffic of going into a bank branch, the traffic of carrying cash, the cost of carrying cash, the dangers and the security hazards that go with it will all be minimized and eliminated. And therefore, what will happen eventually is that the economy will be much more vibrant, much more efficient, and we'll get the benefits of growth
We reached out to the CBN's Director of Corporate Communications, Isaac Okorafor, on some of these concerns. The Apex Bank's spokesperson, who refused to grant an interview, said we should speak with the Nigeria Postal Service. NIPOST is the recognized government agency which has the constitutional backing to collect stamp duties.
The law presently is talking about 50 naira on a 1,000 naira transaction. But you know too very well that NIPOST is involved in everything that has to do with financial inclusion in Nigeria. So in the last Senate, in the last National Assembly, before they won off, there was an attempt to review the act, and we made mention that, or we recommended that the threshold be increased to 10,000 naira.
He adds that the 50 naira charge is almost negligible and won't have any serious effects on the pockets of customers.
Most people that you see them talking about the 50 naira being deducted will affect businesses. These are people that ordinarily, when they go to gas stations, they will refuse to collect the change of 50 naira. In their ordinary, and most of the time, you just go and observe it yourself. Oh, guy, your change is 50 naira. They say just take it. But we are announcing that this 50 naira is legitimate and it's for Nigerian government, and it will help the cost of economic growth.
But this economist thinks otherwise.
It's what we call a benefit tax. It's a tax that you get when you derive a benefit. But benefit taxes, which are indirect taxes, are very imposing on the bottom of the pyramid, because a rich man, right, Bill Gates will pay 50 naira, while you and I will pay 50 naira, and the guy who is jobless will also pay 50 naira for a purchase. And 50 naira is 5% of 1,000 naira. So essentially you're adding 5% to the cost of that commodity or that service.
Nigerians seem to have warmed up to the CBN's cashless economy policy, which discourages cash-based transactions. But in the face of these multiple charges on electronic transactions, the CBN is at risk of policy inconsistency, capable of undoing gains made. So those were my findings. I also asked Bismarck Rewani, an economist, what impact these charges on electronic transactions would have on the ease of doing business in Nigeria. Have a look.
The more seamless, the more convenient, and the cheaper it is to do electronic transactions, the better for the economy. Every time you increase costs, you are increasing the impediments to doing business. So if the ease of doing business is either measured in terms of its cost of doing it, and cost is not just financial cost, the queuing cost, your traffic cost, filing costs, all of these things slow you down, right? So, and there are impediments to productivity. And the more productive an economy, the higher the growth rate. The higher the growth rate, the better the quality of life of everybody, and reduces the incidence of dysfunctional behavior like kidnapping, ransom, mugging and all of that. So the reality is that we must get growth up, we must get incomes up, and we must also get distribution of income. It's of no use when income grows and it is stranded with only 2% of society. In other words, you have billionaires and you have paupers. What we are trying to see is that we should have a fair and equitable distribution of income and a fair and equitable distribution of opportunities. That way there's hope.
Incisive perspective there from Bismarck Rewani, an economist. Thank you. We'd also like you to weigh in on this 15 naira stamp duty charge on electronic transactions from 1,000 naira and above. So follow us on Twitter at @GistNigeriaTV and leave your comments there. Let's move on to our next story for the day. What happens to your old television sets, mobile phones, or household electronics once they are unusable? Did you know that electronic waste are huge sources of copper, silver, iron, and even gold? The BBC's Kunle Falaye tells us more on the economic potentials of recycling e-waste.
According to the United Nations Environment Programme, over 500,000 tons of discarded appliances are processed in the country annually. In most cases, when the e-waste end up here, residents who are out to make some quick cash scavenge the waste with their bare hands at the risk of their health. Up to 100,000 people work in the informal e-waste sector in Nigeria. I want to meet Usman Sani, who has been picking e-waste off dump sites for 5 years.
How much money do you make in a day?
4,000.
4,000 naira. That's about $11.
Yeah, yes.
So who do you sell all this to?
Get one customer where you can buy for me.
A customer comes here
Yes.
and buys them from you.
Yes.
Even though this may not look like a very big business for scavengers like Usman, there are Nigerians who have made a lot of profits from electronic waste.
Isaac Egu is an e-waste merchant who has been in the business for the last 15 years. It depends on scavengers like Usman for his supplies.
So how big is your business? By this I mean, how many people do you have in your employ?
I have like 10 people working with me, and they work from Monday to Friday.
So on an average in a month, how much profit do you make in this business?
I make like 200,000.
That is more than $500, right?
Yeah, that is it.
It looks like the country is gradually seeing the money side of the e-waste. In June, the Nigerian government, the Global Environment Facility, and the United Nations Environment Program announced a $15 million initiative to kick off a circular e-waste system in Nigeria.
According to studies corroborated by the United Nations Environment Program, there is 100 times more gold in a ton of e-waste than a ton of gold ore. It's not just about gold. E-waste are huge sources of iron, copper, platinum, aluminium. I've come to see how this recycling company in Lagos is helping to turn this e-waste to wealth.
Ifeanyi Ochonogo, who runs this recycling facility in Lagos, has been in the business since 2013.
How much waste does this facility handle every month?
We're approaching a ton every month. Things are looking up because the legislation has come out and the enforcement of that legislation is clear as of this year.
What kind of precious metals do you mine for in this e-waste?
You have various amount of precious metals, various kinds of precious metals, from gold. You have other precious materials such as neodymium. That's a rare earth material that needs to be used to manufacture your hard drives.
How do you make money from all this?
A lot of people need their confidential data managed, from the World Bank to Nigerian government, NNPC, whoever you can think of. They need their confidential data secured. That's on a monthly basis. So this is something that I'm glad that the whole of the country is becoming more awake towards and practical as well.
With fast technological advancement making many of these electronics obsolete, chances are they would end up in a dump site. How much do people know about the economic potential in e-waste, along with the dangers associated with continuous exposure to such waste? There is no better place to find out than Nigeria's own Silicon Valley, known as the Computer Village in Lagos. Maduka Anthony has been selling and repairing old electronics but has no idea of how big the business of unusable electronics is.
How do you dispose of your electronic waste?
We don't have any specific or a defined means of disposing those electronic waste. The only people we dispose it through is those, will I call them cat pushers. They normally flog around asking for the scraps. You know, those are them that we are unable to fix and get it to working again. We sell it off to them at peanuts.
Now, are you also aware that this e-waste can be mined for precious metals like gold, like silver, like copper, like platinum?
Not really. I'm not much aware about it. Apart from some of those cat pushers, because most of the time after gathering this, they have some dump ground. After gathering those stuffs, you see them in the evening extracting some vital components from it.
While many developed countries are shipping their e-waste to less developed countries, some business-minded people in countries like Nigeria import the e-waste for its economic value. Kunle Falai, BBC, Lagos, Nigeria.
So that's what happens here. Let's find out how other countries are maximizing potentials from recycling their electronic waste in this week's 360 Roundup. Ghana adopted the Hazardous and Electronic Waste Control and Management Act in 2016. The policy requires producers and private importers of electronics to register with Ghana's Environmental Protection Agency and pay an advanced eco-levy, which can be up to $15 per goods imported. Collected funds are used to enforce environmental protection. And in Hong Kong, manufacturers, importers, retailers, and consumers share the responsibility for the collection, recycling, and disposal of electronic products. Electronic suppliers must have a removal service plan before making sales. They must also provide recycling label and pay recycling levies. This week's 360 Roundup there. Still ahead here on Gist Nigeria from the BBC and Channels TV. We'll bring you the story of one mother who has set up a foundation to provide free prosthetics to children under 18. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Gist Nigeria, brought to you by the BBC and Channels TV. I am Wale Fakile. Thank you for staying with us. Coming up in a moment, we'll check out the award-winning aerospace engineer and the first black woman to obtain a PhD in aerospace engineering from the University of Texas at Arlington. But before that, Crystal Chigbu's daughter was born without a tibia. That's the long bone below the knee. Inspired by her daughter, who is now 10, Crystal decided to set up a foundation to provide free prosthetics to children under 18. The BBC's Grace Ekpu went to meet her.
Crystal Chigbu's young daughter was born without the long bone below the knee.
For the first time someone saw my daughter, the teacher said she couldn't run. A teacher actually told her she couldn't swim. A coach told her, oh, you're not going to be able to swim because you have one leg. I work with children that have been amputated, either as a result of congenital issues or as a result of trauma.
Her solution was to set up a foundation to provide free limbs for children in Nigeria, including her daughter, Beulah.
When I gave birth to my daughter, she had a congenital deformity of her limb. And then we were told when she was 6 days that we had to amputate the limb. I saw that it was beyond, all the pain and the issues that I had. Every time I see her smile, and now being able to make another child smile like she does really gives me joy. So I think that's what really excites me.
The limbs cost up to $5,000 each. The foundation, which is dependent on donations, has given 120 limbs to children and has worked directly with 182 families, helping hundreds of other people.
I want you to force my hands open. Try to do this.
Over 19 million Nigerians live with disabilities, according to the government. In January 2019, Nigeria passed a new law banning discrimination against disabled people after years of advocacy from rights groups. The law prescribes fines and prison sentences for anyone discriminating against disabled people and sets up a 5-year transitional period for public buildings and structures to become accessible for all.
That excites me. It really excites me. So coming from nobody talking about disability to it being a bill and now a law and a lot more people, thinking differently about it, I think that's a lot of impact for us.
Beulah is now 10 and has learned to swim, dance ballet, and do all the things that other children do.
It makes me feel joyful that other people have the same opportunity I have. A person with a disability doesn't mean a part of you is missing. It just means one part of your body is missing, and you can make the most of it. For all the boys and girls out there, I feel like we're perfect the way we are, and God made us for a purpose.
A story of strength there. To other stories. Now, would you drink coffee with your face on it? A cafe in Mombasa, Kenya has a printing machine that prints selfies on customers' coffee. That's what I'll call caffeine and vanity fix in one hit. Have a look.
As soon as you walk in, we give you a small advert. It just tells you that we can print your selfie, your logo on a cup of coffee. We transfer it to our computer, print it directly on the coffee, the order is placed, and then it comes on your table. The whole process, depending on how busy we are, would take about, let's say, 7 to 10 minutes, but the printing itself takes about 7 to 10 seconds. My name is Mohammed Nazir Kaki, and we are currently at MN Cafe. A year ago, I saw this coffee printing machine. And I just fell in love with the concept because, we have a selfie craze. I had a person who came over and he said, I'm selling this machine. I never thought twice about it. I knew that Kenya, no cafe or coffee shop or restaurant in Kenya has that feature. So we brought it along to be unique, number one. And number two, like I said before, to offer something that is totally different, something that will create a hype on social media in itself.
And from coffee and selfies, we move on to this week's edition of Check Me Out. Growing up, Wendy Okolo always dreamed of being an engineer. She worked hard to make that dream a reality. And today, she is an aerospace engineer at the Intelligence System Division, NASA. Let's check her out.
You have the world at your fingertips. Don't sleep on it. My name is Wendy Okolo. I'm an aerospace research engineer by day, a fitness enthusiast in the evening, and an aspiring DJ in my head at night. Check me out. Grew up here. I consider myself to have been a regular kid. Lived in VI, went to school in Yaba. I went to Queen's College, Yaba. And in primary 3, it was like, oh, we have to tell everybody what we were going to be when we grew up. And it got to my turn, and I stood up, and I told the class, I'm going to be an engineer. Silence, just like this. And my teacher looked at me, and she laughed. You're going to be an engineer? You're going to be fixing ceiling fans? That's what you're going to do when you grow up as a girl? And as she laughed, the whole class laughed with her. And I was mortified. I was so embarrassed. I was humiliated. I went home and I told my mother, I said, no, this is not for me. I can't do engineering. I don't even know what it's about, but I don't want to do it because I'm going to be fixing ceiling fans. Mom, who said that? I was like, my teacher. My teacher said, she's like, what? My teacher doesn't know what she's talking about. But she was able to kind of reaffirm and tell me the cool things that engineers got to do. And they weren't fixing ceiling fans. So I went to Texas to be with my family, to be with my big sisters for college, for university, and that was exactly what happened. It was just a transition that was natural in my family. What do I miss about Nigeria? Yeah, food. Food at all times, any type of food I want, particularly fried yam and just having access to yam and more yam. I miss that. I started my bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering. I paid attention in class. This is no joke. In undergrad, I was the queen of listening. If I zoned out when someone was speaking, like to think about something, I zoned back in and asked them what they just said, because I had to take every piece of information that came out of the professor's mouth. I knew all these people's library websites, and I knew what books they had, and I'd get those books, I'd understand and study till I made an A in that class. I do things in the aero and the space world. So for the aero side, I lead a team that is developing the capabilities that will enable autonomy and reduce human intervention for unmanned aerial vehicles, what we call drones or things like that in the airspace. And what happens when you have a drone that can fly place to place quickly? What happens when you have an air taxi that can fly autonomously from place to place? It means that you can do emergency operations. It means that you can pick up someone that is incapacitated and take them from one place to another without sitting in traffic. It means that you can transport an organ quickly to a hospital without having to deal with traffic. I also work on the space side in developing control technologies that will enable precision landing of a spacecraft. So how can you reduce the footprint of landing something on another planet or bringing something back to Earth? And when you reduce that footprint in terms of you have a smaller area that you can do like a rescue to find the thing or to find the spacecraft, it basically just enables autonomy. To people that want to succeed, and you have to want it, right? It's not just about sitting down and waiting for manna to fall from heaven or for someone to bring you the answers, the solutions. You have to want it. My name is Wendy Okolo. I'm an aerospace research engineer, and you have just checked me out.
Great work, Wendy. Let's now take a quick reminder of our top story today. Nigeria's cashless policy may be threatened as more people are allegedly making cash transactions to avoid the stamp duty on POS. Join us again next week where we'll be checking out Silas Adekunle, the robotics engineer who built the world's first intelligent gaming robot. That's where we are drawing the curtains on the program today, but we want you to keep in touch, so connect with us on Twitter at @GistNigeriaTV. You can also get more updates from bbc.com/Africa and channelstv.com. Thanks a lot for staying with us. I am Wale Fakile. Goodbye.